So, hello for another round. Of writing. For writing, I deactivate the sound. Okay. So, yeah, welcome to another round of writing. Again, it's all about the novel I'm writing, and my point is to let you join in from the first idea, well, from my first draft until publishing. As usual, I only write on the novel live, meaning you get to know everything that is going on. This might change a little bit as soon as I introduce also my editor to the channel, where we basically edit live then the book. Right now, I'm still basically in terms of brainstorming and finding out what to do with the novel, outlining each individual chapter, and then moving forward with preparing the launch, creating the cover, etc., etc. So I invite you to this little co-working space, maybe put a little bit of music in the background, and well, just watch me work, or I invite you to use that 1 hour, sometimes 90 minutes, to work on your own project on the side. I will mostly discuss, of course, my own novel, but I will often try to explain why certain things are done that way, or why I think certain things need to be done that way. And if you have any questions, if you want to present your own project, you are welcome. So any questions about writing, narration, planning, project management, publishing, brainstorming, editing, are welcome. If you're new to the channel, I'm using Overleaf for editing. It's just my favorite. And currently I'm having, just to do full screen here, I'm having 7 chapters, and so far I just copy pasted ideas into the individual chapters. The goal is now to bring a little bit more order into the chapters. So there's a lot of ideas, a lot of to-dos that I need when do the actual writing. But that is basically the earliest step to really get a general sense of the outline, what would work, checking the plot holes, and writing a compelling story. In that regard, last time we left off with the committee. So our protagonist is in front of the committee. She sees the first time that, she now recognizes that this is a basically political court, and they're just out to find someone responsible they can blame, and just not blame the whole thing or the higher ups. So she gets her first experience of the authoritarian nature of the organization she has joined. What kind of organization is that? That is the so-called organization Church of Tomorrow that formed after an asteroid impact in a few years ago. I mean, in that futuristic scenario. And in that futuristic scenario, 8 different factions have formed, and our protagonist, that's Catherine, kind of astronaut. We still have to flesh out her character more. An astronaut, or she's very interested in being an astronaut. That is her favorite work. And she is caught basically in that conflict between those 8 different factions. Okay. So just warming things up here. Okay. So the committee was one thing, and the committee ended with the verdict, and she loses her license, and basically she is now at her low point. All the action is done. The committee was an opportunity to look back on the technical side and what has happened there, and she basically returns now in her life for an indeterminate amount of time. The book is basically at a low point, and at that point we say, okay, something happens. And what happens, basically war breaks out between 2 factions. One faction is the Solar Plus, who wants to basically save Earth from climate change, and the other faction is the Church of Tomorrow. Church of Tomorrow is basically a conglomerate of rocket or space companies that build rockets and build high-tech machinery. for traveling to space and traveling in space. So you have those two two factions that are very keen on the whole technology part, but they disagree really with the political goals. So the Solar Plus, they want to basically see Earth as a chance that it can still be rescued, while Solar Plus says, okay, well, Church of Tomorrow says, okay, let's screw you guys. I'm going to space. And that is a little bit of a play to the usual trope where you say, okay, those spacefaring companies, also they are the advanced people, etc. It's similar to the movie Don't Look Up. Maybe Don't Look Up. It's a mixture between Don't Look Up, where they flee into space, and how's it called? I always forget that title. Brought Up by the Wolves. Brought Up by the Wolves. Erased by the Wolves. Okay. Basically also a religious sect going to space. Good. Okay, so that's where we left off last time. Basically a war breaks out, and that is the last thing she sees, at least in this chapter, on television. This changes things for her. Basically, it means, okay, her company where she was demoted is now in dire need of personnel, and she can be re-enlisted, but only in a basically lower job where she has to use a certain kind of implant, and it is a solo mission. So it is very well, it's not cheap, but it is not like a huge mission like the first mission was, and it is more an exploratory mission, and that's basically why we're here. The big question is how much time has passed since chapter 2, and the big other question is to do why would Church of Tomorrow visit Venus. So in the game, that is basically a background to the novel. You have different technologies you can explore, and the travel to Venus is basically a kind of a I have to double check. Yeah. As a transhumanist, collectivist, or central planning goal, meaning it is actually, let me double check, it is actually opposed to the goals of Church of Tomorrow. So it would be something that Solar Plus would start simply with the idea, okay, Solar Plus sends spaceships to Venus to study the climate there, because Venus is basically a model for climate change. I mean, if you want to study a planet that heated up and is now heated up at maximum amount, then Venus would be a good candidate. Theory goes that Venus was once livable. You could live on that. And right now, Venus, I don't recommend landing there. It's way too hot. But Venus has a livable atmosphere in terms of if you bring your own oxygen. You have basically 1G, I mean normal gravity in the atmosphere, and temperature around 70 degrees Celsius. So it's livable. I mean, if you're in a spaceship and traveling around Venus, but you would have 1G. I mean, that is a problem with Mars. and of course the moon that you have, that the gravity is too low. Okay, so why would that mission then exist? So for Solar Plus, it would be to investigate climate change on Venus. So in that regard, it could be that, I mean, it's kind of a mechanic in, it's not that implemented, but the rules are still in development in the game, where you develop a technology that is actually from your competitor and then not release the results, basically. So you're out competing your competition and then not release the results and basically monopolize on that information. So this would mean that Solar Plus cannot launch a spaceship to Venus because their enemy Church of Tomorrow says, okay, no, you can't send a spaceship there. We will block it, or we will even capture it, or something like that. So that could be like the ulterior motive of Church of Tomorrow. Tomorrow wants to block Solar Plus from investigating Venus any closer, to prevent any data about climate change being used as an argument. So that is, I mean, it is a little bit of far-fetched in that regard. I mean, you have other data that could be used in the argument. I mean, they're basically arguing in front of the UN. Okay, how much of a threat is that? That, or even they could report wrong data or pick certain data out, and that is something, and that could be the mystery, or the basically the mystery that our protagonist is following. So she isn't a climate scientist. She doesn't understand much about Venus. She would be basically just used as an astronaut to physically get there, and then her brain implant would partly take over with specialists from Earth, and she wouldn't basically not be conscious about much of what is going on. And that would be the mystery story, and she somehow gets behind it because of something happening then later when she analyzes the data. And that is something she wants to transport back. Hey, we were wrong all along. The other organization is right. We should stop exploiting the world. And then she's put into prison, and then she has to flee, and then the information is released. And basically that way Solar Plus beats or pushes Church of Tomorrow again from their monopolization of that data, of that mission to Venus. So it sounds a little bit constructed, but at least in my head it's okay. Now my job is to make it clear for you as well. Okay, so let's put it down. So let's put down the plot that is relevant here, the background story. So first, she's sent to Venus to basically block any attempt of Solar Plus to acquire that data, or worse, the Church of Tomorrow wants to manipulate the data. I mean, Church of Tomorrow basically wants to use all the resources available and then travel to a far distant planet and then build their theocracy there and rule over the people or rule over the colonists, basically. So she's sent there, and that is basically the motivation of CET, but we don't know that, basically. I mean, it's important to, at this point, to know the motivation of the Church of Tomorrow, and we might put in some indices for the reader. I mean, we won't spell it out that this is the reason why they're doing it, but maybe we put something in that we could later use as a payoff. Don't directly mention the plan of DOT, but allow the reader to figure it out herself. So that is the plan here. So that would be the why. Why is this even happening? And just checking my rules about the technologies. Right. So in the game, I always use like 2 different technologies. I mean, basically space travel or sustainable space station as the core technology, and we have the mission to Venus based on that. So you build basically a space station around Venus and then gather all the data. Or as an alternative, basically that's more the explorers that want to save Earth, and that is more for free market commercialization of space, that they build a space hotel. And basically what Church of Tomorrow does, they build a space hotel, but they also send a spaceship to Venus to block their competitors and maybe even attack any other ship there or sabotage their ship. So that might also be a plot point. And their goal is that there is just a failed mission to Venus, and if it fails, then they can again blame her. I mean, that's the ideal candidate then, because they then can just say, okay, the data was lost because of her, because of our protagonist, and they could say, no, we won't provide any rockets or so to Solar Plus for further research. Just use the data we have gathered, and they of course manipulated the data. Meanwhile, they're building their space hotel and then use that as additional form of financing. Okay, so to do, maybe there's some form of is there some form of sabotage? To do, will she meet anyone from Solar Plus in the orbit of Venus? I mean, that would be interesting, that there is another maybe mini station, and I don't know, they dock and talk or so. Could be to do manipulation of data, to do they're building a space hotel, and the space hotel, it will be a plot point when she returns from Venus, then it will be complete. To do the space hotel could be in construction when she starts. I mean, maybe just very preliminary version of a space station, and when she returns, then there's a hotel with beds, etc. becomes a fully operational hotel when she returns. Okay, so open question still is how much time has passed. That's something I discussed last time. So she returns, then there is the committee, it ends, and then immediately the war begins. It's a little bit quick. And do they immediately then start the Venus mission, or is it already in production? So the most likely situation would be that a Venus mission was already in planning, and second was already planned or in planning, yeah. And what does it want? Oh, in the planning. Then the space hotel was also already in construction. And while that is all going on, they speed up the process, or they focus more on, for example, on space-based weapons once war breaks out, meaning they need new astronauts. Still, I mean, it could be that not much time is going on here, like months or so. It would mean that it's already all in construction, and really the news means, okay, it doesn't happen that way. They will need someone else. It's a little bit of a plot hole because suddenly changing astronauts and they don't have a backup crew or what's going on there. So there needs to be a little bit of a time where they don't have their crews ready to go yet. So they need some time. So basically they have planned, okay, we need to have 2 crews, 1 backup crew, 1 main crew. And then they see, okay, they have to replan the project. So it will need some, I mean, it's not like she shows up at the office and then, okay, here's the spaceship, please go. So there needs to be probably, let's say, 1 year between her application and the start of the mission. Could be longer. The challenge here is her inner development. So she basically returns from this loss, and then immediately she reapplies. It's a little bit like Starship Troopers, where he quits and then immediately 1 hour later he returns, and because of the asteroid impact. So this is still a to do. Okay, but important thing is to keep going and not to lose too much time on a single thing. If you want to write a book, better spend the same amount of time on each part of the book instead of trying to create the perfect beginning and having done not much work on the rest. Okay. So, 1 moment. Okay. So we are done now with, okay, her motivation. So they're looking now for employees, and somewhere in between we have the TV program where they describe the first time the implant that will be important later. And maybe we'll have some here something going on with her daily routine, so we could move that actually further up. The question really is, when do we make this announcement that they're looking for astronauts? Also, in the last chapter, we ended with a cliffhanger. Oh, war starts, and if we then start the next chapter with, okay, she picks up her groceries, that might not be what we want. So either it becomes like a stalemate, like, okay, it was exciting in the first few months, but then it becomes a stalemate with like border conflicts, or with conflicts in terms of, okay, they're hacking each other or something like that. So it's a balance of power. That could be something. So this is still this is still open. So let's put it. Okay, so I would say we start here with war reports. And war reports, that would be the first thing about the using the implant description. And she eventually, we have to describe, I don't know, she then returns to her returns to a small flat and tries to forget the whole issue. She watches television about the ongoing conflicts. She learns that Kitty Inc. and the independent peace forces are now really at war. Maybe we learn that the Church of Tomorrow wants to monopolize space, and maybe at this point that they are building the space hotel and plan to start a Venus mission. And we mentioned that Solar Plus also wants to start a Venus mission, mentioning that learning more about Venus will help us to restore Earth. So that could also be some sort of television program. Okay. Still open point is her inner development. So to do inner development, how does she cope? Do we just say, okay, she goes groceries shopping? It would be an interesting implication if she was before the astronaut, and then we see her in her apartment and, I don't know, knitting or watering the plants in her small also as an expression. Okay, she's still supported by the government, but she basically has nothing to do now, and doesn't want anything to do. Just knitting, maybe getting up late. So that's like a sign or symptom of depression. I don't know, fast food delivery or grocery delivery. And that's when she picks up her package. She doesn't even go out anymore. And then some small talk and also talk about the technology, about the perfect vegetable. And she returns. And we maybe say, okay, it's 6 months later. And then she sits down and watches the television ad. About the implant. So the big question is now, next on the list is, how does she beat the depression? How does she get out of it? What's going on in terms of, she probably will not actively search for a job. She might. So something needs to happen. Her an outside push, or she starts working out. Something needs to happen that she basically says, "Hey, I can't do this. I need help." Seeking help. Is there then a therapy going on? Is there a therapist, or is there therapy going on? So maybe there are a lot of ads for a new employee search portal. So they're investing extra into finding new people. And one job ad captures her attention. So this is still here a to-do, how she eventually, how does she get out of depression? Because basically she thinks, okay, her former employer doesn't want her anymore, and basically she doesn't feel wanted anymore. She expected to be like the hero of the Mars mission, but now she's like forgotten, and no one reports about her anymore. She's the person non grata. So politically, she's basically was destroyed. But she still has, of course, she's still competent astronaut, and that's something they need for that mission. Also to do, how does she get the brain implant? That's also not an easy decision. So we have to basically create a bridge between her depression or the job ad, and her basically making that jump where she says, okay, either she's in a mood where she says, okay, I don't care anymore, or she says, okay, that sounds actually something I could work on. Is she going there as a destroyed person, or is she already making progress? That is the question. And if she is making progress here, then we need to describe it. So basically, at this point, we need to say, okay, will she start the job depressed, or did she make internal development here? So does she have an intensive talk with a friend? Did she maybe decide one day, got up one day and says, okay, I want to, I don't know, expose the organization and find out what's going on? So what is happening here? That is that's something she needs to we need to decide here. So let's do some brainstorming. Okay, so does she want to go back deliberately to just show how, I don't know, how bad the company is? Or does she the opposite? Does she want to prove herself? Or is she maybe reminded like as like a quotation mark national pride? I mean, that would be the route the route Starship Troopers took, basically. So Rico didn't want anything to do anymore. For Rico, the catastrophe was the accident during training. He was disciplined and then he quits. And this is basically also her situation. And I think we need to say here that she quit, and that's maybe something we need to do here as well. To do maybe she quit. I mean, maybe she was demoted, but not fired, so they could still use her. So they could use her intelligence, but they didn't want her as a commander. So let's put it maybe as an idea here. Yeah, so that's something, of course, the writers of, for example, Starship Troopers also had to think about. Okay, what's the plot of Rico? Okay, so she quit, and then something happens, and then she says, "Oh, why did I do this?" So this would be, I think, a more interesting thing, so that we don't push her really to the bottom here. I mean, herself, she is at the bottom, but she's more disappointed by the whole thing. So and that happened before. Well, I don't want to rewrite Starship Troopers, basically, but basically, her in quotation mark asteroid was the committee. So she was demoted, but not fired, but quit herself. And then this happens with the declaration of Solar Plus, and we need to basically show that she is angry at Solar Plus. So we need to maybe put ourselves into the shoes of someone who is really convinced of going to space, using capitalism to gather all the resources from Earth and build spaceships. Okay. Yeah, so this would work. So how could she be angry at Solar Plus? So basically her anger turns her to the dark side, turns her is basically then stronger. Anger against Solar Plus is then stronger than against her former employer. And then then we could also shorten this. She immediately regrets her decision and now sees as her national. I mean, it's not nationalistic because the company is not a nation, but like nationalist pride or yeah, or identity maybe. So she doesn't like her employer, but she still loves the idea of traveling the stars. She loved the idea of traveling the stars, and this is something actually we need to put as a core characterization of the character. So this is very important here. So we need to have maybe even in the very beginning here that we say she really maybe a flashback to her childhood. Maybe she saw science fiction series, or she has heroes at NASA, maybe like female astronauts. Not sure if you can mention Star Trek or something like that. So she really is into the whole idea, traveling to the stars and colonizing Mars simply out of scientific curiosity. And that's a better backstory than, okay, she had a difficult childhood and now she has to deal with trauma. I mean, she has to deal with trauma then of a later situation, but not like in a childhood or so. So she's an idealist. She thinks the future is in the stars. I mean, everything that science fiction teaches us, but with a twist. And the twist is, okay, first we have to clean up our own spaceship called Earth. So her plot is basically to accept that spaceship Earth first needs to be cleaned up before going to the stars. And that is, I think that is then the core message. And again, this is something you find out if you really go into the plot and really think about, okay, why does your protagonist do that? Yeah. So and what is and then we have to basically make Solar Plus a villain and they Solar Plus sorry makes a statement about that makes a derogative statement about space travelers. I don't know, something like nerds in space or something like that, that really hits her core value, her scientific endeavor, and that she doesn't like it. And that's really her push back into the organization, and she pushes away the drawbacks of like internal politics and etc. Okay, so that is her, why she goes back, and then she even so that is basically decision 1, and decision 2 is really how can she go back. So she knows she was demoted, she can never be a captain again or commander again of a crew, but she still wants to be helpful and really to put her skills to the test. So that's something going on. Okay, here. So here we have the whole thing about her living in an apartment, and as we said, okay, her change is really the statement of Church of Solar Plus about space travel. The question is, happens that before or after? If it happens after, then we can use it. So basically, this happens, and then the question is, what really gets her out of it? Is it the initial declaration of war, or is it 6 months later when she has calmed down? So this is something to do derogative statement about space travel, about science or science fiction, etc. from Solar Plus. Oops. And that puts her on the road, basically. Okay, she is now ready to rejoin, but then she struggles again. So what is her struggle? Her struggle is to get a job. She's 6 months out. She's maybe in bad shape. So she is in bad shape. She is motivated, but she's motivated, but she is also 1 year out of the job. So here's the question. Okay, what would push her to get a brain implant? And I think what we need to do is to reduce the idea that this is something like, okay, they just take your brain out and put another thing in, but this is something that you can also attach and detach, and that requires a minimal invasive procedure. So to do brain implant requires only a minimal invasive procedure. And easy to remove. If it's easy to remove, then anyone can, then she isn't special. To do this would mean she is not special. Do we need her to be special, to have a special implant that is better than, makes her better than anyone else? I think the only thing we need is that this is experimental. This is experimental. It's a one woman job. So she has to deal with loneliness in space. But also she there are there isn't much competition. So we have to describe the job market, maybe describe interviews that are going on. Maybe we'll describe headhunters that are banging at her door, basically banging at her door. Even headhunters of Solar Plus. So, and maybe even she has an angry or angry conversation with a headhunter. That could also be a possibility that also pushes her further. And where is he? She has an angry conversation with a headhunter. And well, to show how competitive the job market is. I mean, I've already put it. Market is implying that, I mean, instead of saying, oh, the job market is very competitive, so she got the job, we imply that by her experience when applying to jobs, and that everyone looks for an astronaut. So everyone is suddenly looking for astronauts, but she felt so badly treated by Solar Plus that she returns to Church of Tomorrow. The implant then is just a small thing, I think. So it's not a big issue. So she receives the implant. It's probably we will once we describe it in detail, we will have some more insight into it. And here we will mention the genetics, the personalized medicine, and then she goes back on a mission. We already have this here. Severe lack of astronauts. Paint a picture of shortage of astronauts. Busy with other projects, and this all goes up there. And then training. Here we could mention the implant the first time. So this training would be on Earth. So this is just cardio, basically. So basically what this implant does is, okay, you can basically switch and 1 hour later you switch back on and you run for an hour and without having to use that much of your brain, basically. So running for an hour without being conscious of it. So she regains confidence. So describe how this manifests. And so they're building colony ships. This is a little bit okay. So here, okay, the chapter ends with at the door of the doctor. No, this is no. We will discuss this during this chapter, so there won't be a flashback. But there could be some more discussion with the doctor about how the implant works. So to do some neuroscience here could sprinkle in, and this could end here. Chapter ends on the space hotel. We'll describe that it's minimally functional, working as a transport hub. I mean, there are no hotels actually there, space station. So it's a first version, and there she goes into her spaceship. And then we later return there and we show, or she will look around and then see all the things that changed. Okay, I think we especially with the one thing about the characterization here, that she loves the idea of traveling stars. I think that is the core thing that makes her value something, and once someone values something, well, you take it away or you attack it, and then you have the emotional reaction, and it puts the reader a little bit on her side, or on the side of Judge for Tomorrow, where they say, those are the people that know what to do, build spaceship. That's the solution. But then comes the turnaround then when they start manipulating. So the first blow was, okay, there's some politics going on during the committee. Then the Venus mission, why are they doing that? That's not their goal. And then that with the implant in the next chapter, and then it basically escalates then more and more and more, until really the heroes welcome. She thinks, okay, she has successfully finished everything, but no, they strike her again down, and then she has to switch sides. So that is the story. So I like it. Again, this is something you can only see if you really work through the plot and see how it all works together. Okay, thank you for watching. I continue tomorrow again with the next chapter when she lifts off or leaves space station Earth to Venus, and we will talk a lot about, okay, how does Venus work? What kind of space station? What technology does she find there? What about her implant? How does she experience her implant with experts from Earth, basically using her, and her first discoveries on Venus. So that will be the next mystery, and hoping to get through it. But I'm have a good feeling now. It's kind of working. So with enough back research, it works out. I'm happy. Yeah. In that regard, yeah. Thank you for watching. See you again tomorrow. Usual time 9 o'clock, or German time, or 3 o'clock American time. Yeah, that's all. I also started another stream that is on Wednesday and Saturday about music theory. That also goes a little bit into the direction of design, how to write a story, but from the music point of view. Yeah, it's also on my YouTube channel and on the Twitch channel, but I still have to figure some things out. The title sometimes wrong, etc., etc. We'll get there. I'm motivated. Okay, have a nice evening. See you soon.